Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the late video. Unfortunately, I had a family emergency this morning and it's kind of put me behind schedule a little bit. Anyway, it's resolved now and we can get on to the main news story of today. But before we do, can I yet again remind you, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. And if you'd really like to support the work that I do here, you're welcome to buy me a coffee. The link is in the description box below. I really do appreciate those coffees. Anyway, let's get on to the news story. And really, there's only one news story that I actually really want to cover because I think it's the most important news story to cover at the moment. And I'll explain why. And this was actually the return of our disgraced ambassador from the United States. This is Rasool that got kicked out of the United States as persona non grata. Basically, they kicked him out because they said he was a racist and a bigot and, the other usual buzzwords. Anyway, he came back to Cape Town and this was his reception.
And my brothers and sisters from the media, can you just run a centimeter or two back, please? They're cooperating, they're doing it. I'm their leader, they listen to what I say. So can we do the same, all of us?
Now, there's a number of things in this reception that I want to highlight. The first is that the actual individuals who welcomed Rasool home were obviously the regional ANC office, that stands to reason, the SSCP and the trade union COSATU, so basically the ANC and its tripartite alliance, although the SSCP is questionable these days. Anyway, there were a number of issues in the video that I want to highlight to you. The first is you will notice that there were Palestinian flags. On top of that, there were many individuals wearing the Palestinian headscarf. Now, for those of you who don't know what that headscarf is, it was basically a fashion accessory made famous by Yasser Arafat when he was pushing forward forms of Palestinian autonomy. It's not a talit and it's not a Muslim prayer shawl. It's basically a Palestinian accessory that many individuals now wear, showing basically support with Palestine. It's very interesting that one individual has it over their head, some have it over their shoulders. Yeah, this has just become exactly that. It's an accessory. What else you see is lots of ANC flags. But what I would highlight to you that you don't see anywhere is a South African flag. You see ANC colors and the Palestinian flags. And this ultimately is actually the issue at the moment with the ANC. Now, Rasool came back and basically said that Cyril Ramaphosa should apply his mind and delay appointing a new individual because he would be pressurized to put a white ambassador in place to deal with a white president. And he says you don't need to do that because doing that would basically set us back. He says that we should pick up where we left off. It would be simplistic to have a white ambassador, and so as a result, we should really hang 10. And the first question I would have to ask here is, are we saying that white people are not fit for the ambassadorial role, and that when we say that it would be non-progressive to employ a white person, can you elaborate on that? Is that because you want to exclude whites from the economy? Not a very smart saying, is it? He then went on to say that the diplomacy of Ubuntu, I love that phrase, Ubuntu, as if it actually means anything, because it doesn't. It means nothing. It means whatever we want it to mean in the moment. Anyway, he says it's not the art of lying for your country, it's the art of speaking truth generally. ANC and truth, like, yeah, right. The diplomacy of Ubuntu does not involve flattering your host or denying what is wrong. It encompasses intellectual engagement and the persuasion of your host in a better way, except what he did was not persuasion or intellectual engagement. He literally sat there and talked down to a sitting president and told him that he was racist and pushing forms of colonial thought onto the rest of the world. This was not constructive. It was anything but constructive. So Rasool further goes on and says that we tried conventional diplomacy and we tried to avoid discussions about the genocide, specifically the genocide in Israel. And you can't really say that because you took Israel to the ICJ. You've made it a cornerstone of ANC policy. Yeah, not South African atrocities, Palestine, Palestinian issues. The Muslim population accounts for 2% of South Africa, 2%. But this is like one of the cornerstone policies of the ANC. Whilst the rest of our country goes to pop, we're like, oh, yeah, we must discuss the genocide. The genocide. Yep, of course. This is, we tried conventional diplomacy, and the US said that we must pretend that there is no merit in the idea of land confiscation. We cannot ignore that. And again, I'm reminded that we are told that land expropriation without compensation, land confiscation, is not a real thing. Apparently, it's a white conspiracy being pushed forward by right-wing individuals such as Solidarity and AfriForum. And here we have an exact comment from a former ambassador, member of the ANC, which says we must pretend that there is no merit in the idea of land confiscation. So you want land confiscation. This is stupid. This is exactly what I'm saying about the ANC. They are just dumb. He then goes and, this was actually Ramaphosa's statement, he then said he calls on South Africans to reject the politics of diversion that are emerging globally. In particular, we should challenge the completely false narrative that our country is a place in which people of a certain race or culture are being targeted for persecution. It's very interesting. And the reason it becomes interesting is because at the weekend, the ANC retards were penning their own little letters whilst Ramaphosa was trying to fix the relationship with the US. Let's use the example of Mbalula. So Mbalula said that the real reason that South Africa was being imposed with all these horrendous measures was because an African country dared to drag the apartheid state of Israel to the International Court of Justice to hold them accountable for their actions in Gaza and Greater Palestine. Greater Palestine. Okay. He says, land reform is not theft, it is restitution. Affirmative action is not racism, it's correction. Okay, this is reminding me of 1984. Like, you're literally redefining everything to make it sound more PC. He says a foreign policy that challenges Western double standards is not reckless, it is a minimum requirement of sovereignty. Okay, but if you want to go out there and directly challenge the Western states, do not be surprised when the Western states say, yeah, Futek, we don't want to work with you. Because quite often their challenges are not challenges. It's like saying, I'm going to challenge you by just calling you racist to your face. They're slurs. They're abominable arguments. They're not forms of rational exchange. He then further says we have no illusions about the intentions of those who are trying to bully us with threats of economic chaos because we dare to proceed with actions aimed at dismantling the colonial and apartheid legacy to restore the dignity of our people. You mean expropriation without compensation? Which again, I'm assured is not happening. It's very interesting because then another ANC stooge went on to say that the renaming of Santon Drive, and I've already played this clip for you, apparently was to commemorate the first woman to hijack a plane. Yeah, first woman, woman power, yeah. And the reason they want to do that is to force the US Embassy, this is their words, not mine, before you all start telling me it's the consulate. They said the US Embassy to change its letterhead to One Terrorist Drive. Because that way they intend to show the US that they cannot dictate to South Africa. This is true. They can't dictate to South Africa. So they continue to footsack and cancel every trade agreement going and leave you with, quote, unquote, as Mbalula says, economic chaos. It's so retarded. It's like dealing with people that have a mental disability, except the people with a mental disability are the people in power. It is beyond a joke. Now, the idea that South Africa actually needs all this land redistribution is one that is starting to become rarely questionable. Because if we use this example of this interview with D. McPherson, he says the government currently holds 1,259 vacant land parcels, 207 unoccupied houses, 830 abandoned farms, and last year alone, over 65 million rand was spent on rates and taxes on these properties that are all unused. He says the Department of Public Works now intends to lease these properties to the public. Only now intending to do it. Right, but only 31 of the properties are actually ready for lease. You know why? because the rest of them are absolutely dismal states and unfit for habitation. Now, Ramaphosa did go out there and say, oh, he's trying to appease everything with, the United States so that we don't all end up in a big hoo-ha palaver with him. But he then went on to say that South Africans should reject the politics of divisiveness. And I find that so peculiar, because he's not sitting there telling the EFF to shut up when it's calling for the slaughter of white people, or when it's singing Kill the Boer. He's not sitting there telling these individuals to shut up about the Palestinian issue as if the Palestinian issue is something that unites all South Africans, because it does not. At a bare minimum, what about the Jewish population? Do the Jewish population want to be sat there told that they're all going to be exterminated and run into the ocean? It's not a unifying issue. Majority of Christians actually don't support the whole Palestinian issue. They support Israel. Is the whole issue a defining issue? Is it a uniting issue that unites South Africa? No. It unites those that want to corner themselves around that idea of the Palestinian state. They want to push that forward. But it's not a national uniting issue. Regardless, if you support Palestine, great. No worries. You do what you do you. But at the end of the day, let's not pretend that it is a unifying issue that unites South Africa. In fact, the idea of Cuba, China, Russia, these issues also don't unite South Africans. They are all very peculiar issues that are of high value to the individuals that value that issue. In other words, if you're very pro-Russian, you're going to really, really enjoy that. If you're not, you're really not going to like Russia. They are polarizing issues. Let us not pretend that these things unite the country. They do not. And yet here we are. We're told that it only unites the country, and according to Ramaphosa, we should not allow the events beyond our shores to divide us or turn us against each other. No, dude, you don't need those events to do it. You can do it just fine yourself. Because let's be honest, none of these issues unite South Africa. You know what unites South Africans? Having a job, good economic growth, having electricity, that would be swell, economic growth, an increase in wages and extra additional funds to, buy luxuries, having a home, and actually having a nice clean state that provides you with services. Those would all be swell. I'm pretty sure that every South African can get behind those. So why don't we concentrate on those issues? The answer is because those issues are hard. It's much easier to concentrate on issues that we have no control over. Because South Africa has no control over whether Palestine's free or Israel's being held accountable, according to Mlula. Those issues don't affect us. But according to the ANC, and I quote, "We must never trade our sovereignty, lest we be told that China and Cuba cannot be our friends." Because Cuba contributes what to the South African economy? You see, if you want a uniting issue, you go to the issues that grow the economy and enhance the average individual's ability to earn a wage. In other words, they have more money in their pocket because they got a better job. Those are the issues that unite us. The average person that lives in poverty don't give two monkeys about Cuba. Let's be real. All this while they obviously sit there and say how important it is that we keep it going, but we need to pursue a mutually beneficial relationship. And this is the whole point of everything that Donald Trump is doing. He says that the relationships around the world are not mutually beneficial. The countries that get the relationships usually benefit from it, whilst the US is subsidizing whatever benefit that nation appears to be getting from the agreement. I mean, this is what's happened with Canada, Mexico, South Africa. All the other countries benefit and the United States has to foot the bill. The same thing happens with our health issues in South Africa that we're getting funded by US aid. How does the average person in the United States benefit from that? Well, they don't. So Trump has sought to reevaluate the relationship and improve it. But it's okay when it's benefiting us, but it doesn't work two ways, even though Ramaphosa says it needs to be a mutually beneficial relationship. At least the ANC's Veteran League president basically said that he didn't really want a relationship with Donald Trump because Donald Trump was, and I quote, an imperialist. Oh well, at least you're being honest. He says, how can you rebuild diplomatic relationships with an enemy? Well, he goes on further then to say that the land issue is being used to bully the ANC, but the party will not abandon the fight against the historical injustices of land dispossession. Remember, expropriation without compensation is not happening, but it's going to happen and it's a good thing. Yes, the double speak here is just too much. They just assume all of us are retarded. We are not as retarded as them. We have ears, we can understand what they're saying. In any case, that's just my views. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Until next time, bye.